So just a reminder to hashtag. Make sure that when you share your work, you're hashtagging Dina Wakley Media. Also, just a reminder, my name is spelled W-A-K-L-E-Y. Looks like Wackley. That's why Mario calls me Dina Wakley. So Dina Wakley is my name. So spell my name right so I see your stuffins. Also Ranger Ink, I-N-K, so that we see your work. Glad you guys are popping in. All right, so last time I talked about the importance of play, and a lot of you guys were doing that this weekend, which makes me super happy. I hope you had a blast doing it, and that becomes part of your normal art making routine. So this is the critique phase. So we've done phase, play phase, now critique. And critique happens for me. And again, all of this is gospel according to Dina. So you take another art teacher, they will tell you something completely different to what I'm saying, right? So you guys know that, take all this with a grain of salt. But this is how I can only teach you what I do, and this is what I do. So I look at my pieces that I've played with. So that includes any tags that I might have played on, any pieces of watercolor, backgrounds that I have made in journals. This was another one that I did the other day. Cool. And so then I have to decide, is what I have created workable? Meaning, and notice that the question is it workable? Not, do I like it? And I'll be like, well, that one's ugly. Just because I've made something ugly, it actually doesn't mean I don't like it. Because I always joke that I have really low art standards and that I like everything I do. And it kind of is true. I have a million ways to fix things. So you have a couple of choices. So let's think, instead of thinking, do I like this? Let's think of, is it workable? Can I proceed with this? And, the answer is yes or no, right? So if the answer is yes, we're going to talk about that. If the answer is, oh, you know what? No, I did it wrong. Did anybody catch that? If the answer is no, can't believe I wrote my notes incorrectly. Technical writer error. Okay, so if the answer is yes, then you're going to take this path or a path like this, okay? If the answer is no, then you need to turn to this page, which is what to do with a hot mess, okay? So let's look at my pieces. Now, one of the things that I have learned is that if I leave white space on my pieces, that I like them better. And again, I'm going to say the word like, but remember, I don't even care if they're ugly, right? So, but for me, they're workable. They're more workable for me visually. I feel like I have more room for more to come if I have left some areas white. I'm going to do a whole separate daily demo about white space. It's the number one thing that people kind of struggle with in class. Hi guys, and that they fight with me on. And so that we'll discuss more about that later, but that's just something I've learned about myself, that if I overdo it and do too many layers, I find it difficult to keep working. Okay. So I like to leave, some areas open. I mean, these are just plays, right? So playing. So, if they end up crazy, fine. So those were my plays from the other day, including sort of my failed marbling techniques. And then I think I did a large page, but I can't remember what journal it is in. But, oh, I do remember. It was that purple one. But here are the two small journals, okay? So only you can answer the question, is it workable? Because what's workable to me might be just so overwhelming to you. And what's overwhelming to me just might be your jam. So back in the day, I used to teach a class called The Art of Layering. And I would start by making everybody layer 25 layers on one sheet of paper. And I would guide people through so it didn't get too out of control. But there were always people who were like, oh my gosh, This is like puke on a page. And then there's always a few people in class that say, let's keep going. I love it. I want more layers. So just like you can all handle a certain amount of clutter in your house, you can all handle a certain amount of visual chaos. And I've learned I like there to be some interesting visual chaos, but I balance it out with this white. So that's just a Dina thing. Okay. So I think these are both workable. Let's keep looking. I think that's okay. I mean, eventually you'll get to the point where almost everything is workable. Well, actually, that's not true. I still make a lot of butt ugly things. Okay, I pulled this off the floor. So let's say there must have been a focal point on here at some point. I needed on another piece, so I cannibalized this page. All right, so let's say I got to this point, and let's cover it up more. So I just want to make it a little more chaotic for me. A little bit of green. Where else should we put that green? La, 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 la. Never waste your paint. Okay, look at that. That looks like a big pile of baby poop right there. All right, so let's say I get to this and think, self, that is not workable, okay? So if that's not workable, then we're gonna see number 2. So if it's not workable, you want to think, you want to have a little repertoire of techniques that you do to control, to make something workable, or I call it the hot mess techniques. What you do if you have an absolute hot mess, okay? And am I gonna see you tomorrow, Jennifer and Curdy? I will. I've got to bring you some stuff. Okay, so sorry, I'm way bad attention deficit squirrel. I got that CPAP today, you guys. Oh my gosh, I'm going to be like Darth Vader in bed. Anywho, so these are some of my favorite ways to deal with a hot mess. Now, you may have different ways, okay? And so feel free to chime in on the comments if you have a different way. One of my absolute favorite ways, though, to reduce a hot mess is to mask it. In masking is a way of reducing. So bottom line is, if something is too much, if you have something that is so overdone, you've got to get rid and consolidate it down. You've got to get rid of the craziness. So here's another one, okay? This has a lot of black lines. This was actually a sample in one of my books at one point, but I took part of it out for something else. So by getting rid of some of the hot mess, you are able to control that chaos a little bit better. I used to tell the story about baby thighs. So Barbara and Kay and some of you guys that have been with me for a long time can tell the baby thigh story, but let me tell it really quickly. Baby thighs is, my middle son Cole was really fat at age 3 months. He weighed 20 pounds. And I remember the pediatrician being a little shocked because the pediatrician said, wow, there's 1-year-olds that don't weigh 20 pounds. Why on earth does this child weigh 20 pounds? I don't know. He was breastfed. He plumped up real chubby. He was so cute. He looked like a little Buddha. If you moved a roll of fat on his legs, there was kind of a little roll under it. Like, he was just the cutest. And I live not far from Sun City, Arizona. And I don't like being housebound. So I would take my babies to the mall and we would just walk around and we would buy cookie cups from Mrs. Fields, those little tiny chocolate chip cookies. Anyway, so why did it just go blurry? So we would go to Sun City or to the mall, and all the Sun City ladies would come and totally snog him. And they would kiss his head and his legs, and they just could not resist touching his legs because they were so cute. And then one day I looked in the mirror and I realized that my legs looked just like Cole's legs. And it's not very cute when you're like 5'10", 200 pounds, but it's adorable when you're 3 months old, right? So the bottom line is, if you have something big that's a hot mess, that is the Dina thigh. That is the big, fat, chubby, like, oh my word, that is a hot mess. But little, the same thing is workable, okay? So one of my favorite things to do is mask over a hot mess. So I might take any mask that I can find, or I might cut one myself, and use a neutral paint and just get rid of the chaos. So a lot of you have done this in class where we use silhouettes. This is awesome for your silhouettes. It's great for shapes. And I can tell that I once, at some point, because this was a book sample, I sealed it with clear coat because my paint is beating up on it a little bit. Interesting. But by getting rid of a large portion of that chaos, you'll find visually it just narrows it down. So a little baby thigh's worth of chaos is workable. Mama thigh worth of chaos, it just isn't workable, you guys. It just isn't. Now that is still a little crazy, so I might reduce it further by cutting it. And now all of a sudden, that circle, I can't believe I used black. That circle is completely toning down the chaos that was behind it. And it's now workable, right? Okay, so this would then go in the workable pile. And my other favorite thing is just to cut stuff down. So, you know, I might look at this and think, well, that's a whole pile of hot poo. Let's reduce it. So masking is a way to reduce the chaos. Painting over it is masking. Cutting. Even that puke green does not look terrible on a small square. It truly doesn't. There's just something magical about reducing a hot mess. And it's another reason why, if I make something ugly, I know all hope is not lost. I know, even in a journal, on a journal page, because if you have a journal page that turns hot, you know, into a hot mess, you're not necessarily going to cut it down, but you can mask it. You can take white paint and cover up a large portion that, I'm just looking for one that's a hot mess. So this one, you can tell at some point in the background just did not work. I then masked the shapes out of it, and then you're fine, right? Reduction of the hot mess is how you are able to, is one of the ways you're able to proceed. Another thing is, if you've got, you know, a big hot mess, if you put a big focal point over it, what are you doing? You're reducing the hot mess. You are changing the amount of that hot mess that's visible, and make, you know, it just might be okay. This is why I love tags. So Kay, you asked one time, you know, what do you do with all the tags? I use them as focal points constantly, especially these number 10s and the number 8s, but the number 10s take up almost an entire page. So if I'm making something and I'm thinking, oh, Dina, what on earth did you do there? This is the one. You guys, I can't find that purple background. What on earth did I do? That's when the large tag comes into play. So I did finish, yeah, I did have you guys do this in class. It makes a huge difference. So I just finished filming my abstract flower class for online use. I just got to edit it today. That's my task for this afternoon. But like, look how much of that background is gone. I mean, I wouldn't put that there, but I'm just saying, look how big of a footprint a large focal point has, right? So again, if something ends up like, oh, Dina, what were you thinking? Voila. And then you're, you know, fixed, right? Fixed. Okay. So that's how I deal with a hot mess. Does anybody have any other tips for dealing with hot messes? I'm watching for your comments. Like this background here was a terrible hot mess. The print didn't work out good. So what goes on top of it? A large size 8 tag, and then the size 8 tag, I mean, that background's still a little ugly, but it's still, I can still do it. So what Kay said, gesso, yeah, you can gesso, but here's the deal. Save your gesso for a new page. Find ways to make stuff workable. So try reducing, try masking, just, yeah, I get that people want to reduce, or mask or gesso over stuff. I hear that all the time. I just want to give you a challenge to not do that. I think artistically, you will grow if you figure out how to work with your uglies. I really do. All right, does that make sense? Cool beans. So what Kay mentioned was keep layering is another thing that I have here under hot mess. So masking is reducing the chaos, right? Okay. This is the technical writer in me trying to make this sensible. I hope this helps. Yeah, add a door, but still, if you're adding a door, Megan, you're reducing it, right? So that's so smart. Cut a window out of it. And so again, you're reducing it. This reduction, whatever way, let's see, you can cut windows. Awesome idea, Megan. Add a door. So anything that's covering up a fair amount of that, it's fine. And then remember, add neutrals, exactly. Lower your standards, my friends. You hold yourselves to these high artistic standards that are just unattainable. Walk away for a while. Also take a picture of it with your cell phone. There's something about looking at it 2D versus 3D that might help you identify what to do as well. So as you guys come up with good ideas, I'll keep adding them to these little papers here. Did I miss any that you guys mentioned? Keep layering. Where can I get a Dina supplies? Michelle, where do you live? I have lots of hot messes to practice on too. And a gesso wash. Okay, so Heather recommended a gesso wash, but that again is reducing the chaos, right? So I call that I just call it a whitewash, and it is amazing. Ooh. My phone is still recording. Oh, now it says connection available. So it should come back here in just 1 second. Okay, I think it's coming back, you guys. Yay. And it is blurry. All right, there we go. We're back. I really think so many people are on the internet. My husband's also working from home. And he, the internet is, the internet is really strained, right? In these weird times we're living in. All right, so I missed comments. So if you have anything to add, just let me know as well. But let's go to the keep layering idea. So that's another thing that I'll do. I'll look at something and think, well, that's a hot mess. And if it's a hot mess, who cares? If you add more layers and make it worse, right? In fact, if you add more layers, sometimes you'll find it's fixed, number one. Number two, sometimes it makes it more interesting when you cut it up, if you've got more visual density there. So, oh my gosh, that must have been a sample at some point. But there's a lot going on here, and so if I want to add more layers, I'm probably going to add white at this point because there's a lot of dark happening. La 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 la. Let's just wipe some of it out. Oops, why is that gray? It's not white. Must have accidentally got some of the black. Oh well. So if you just keep adding layers, it may end up fixed, and if it doesn't end up fixed, you still know what to do with your hot mess, right? You still know what to do, you guys. I promise. But anytime you want to reduce, look how much better that looks already. Seriously, people. By reducing the chaos, that's the key. And all those different methods of reducing are great. Sometimes I'll reduce the chaos and then I'll just bring a little bit of it back by rubbing through the stencil, because you did all that work for the chaos, right? And by bringing a little bit back visually, it's interesting, but I can still keep it controlled in a way. I don't want all your hard work. That's why, again, I don't gesso over things 100%, because I feel like you still got some good, there's still some good in there, right? There's still some good. So let's play on that. Oh, so much better, right? Cool. All right. Everybody clear on that? The B is my most stolen stamp. So the number one thing that gets stolen for me, as far as the number one thing that gets stolen are pencil sharpeners. The number one stamp that gets stolen is this B. I finally had to buy myself a set, this set, because I was worried it was going to retire. That was gonna, you know, just because I have so many without the B. So many people rip me off. I don't know what it is about this stamp. I guess I didn't want the butterfly and the moth and all the other things that come into play there. I don't know. People are funny, you guys. People are funny. What stamp set is the B in? Scribbly. It's an older set. Scribbly winged creatures, scribbly winged, scribbly flying. I don't know. I can't remember. Joey said I have to look it up. I cannot. Anybody remember what the set is called with the B? It's definitely an older set. That's why I was worried it might. Oh, scribbly insects. Danielle, thank you. Scribbly insects. That's what it's called. Scribbly insects. Yeah. And there's also another set where I took a lot of the original flowers I did, and the animals. I don't know, Sue. Call your local store, and what you're gonna do is ask them to order it. Make sense? It's not frozen for me, so I don't know what to tell you about that. Oh yeah, people steal stuff all the time. And the thing is, what people don't know, and Diana and I say this all the time, is that we purchase everything for class. The reason why class costs what it costs is that I also have to buy my plane ticket, my hotel. Sometimes I rent a car. I have to pay for the shipping of the products, and then I pay for all those products, except Art from the Heart, where Ben pays. So it's that's why, you know, class. If you come to me, and I've traveled to your local store, it's why class is more expensive than a normal class there, probably because there are all these extra elements happening. Okay, scribbly insects. Thank you, you guys. All right, so let's go back. We know we talked about reducing. So now, if it's workable, then you figure out how to make it workable. And the more you create, the more you'll figure out how to make things workable. It's just one of those things. There's no substitute for the work. If it is workable, then you get to do what I think is the most fun part of art. I don't love backgrounds. Some people could make backgrounds for hours. I would rather poke my eyes out with a stick. Backgrounds are a drag for me. I want to get to the meat. I want to get to the words, and I want to get to the focal point, because that is what gives me the most creative satisfaction. I just, a background that's going to get covered up. Blah. For a long time, every year I preach a couple of different art gospels, and one of the ones from a couple years ago was backgrounds don't matter. Backgrounds don't matter. And if they do matter, it's not a background anymore. You guys have made it into a finished painting. Okay, so yes, you get to decide on the focal point, and then I add supporting elements. So like you decide on the star of the show, and then you decide on the supporting cast. That's the Leonardo DiCaprio. This is the Brad Pitt, right? Well, Brad could be a star, but I'm just talking about that movie that they that Brad won the Oscar for this year. Okay, so star of the show, supporting elements, and words can be the focal or words can be supporting. It's totally up to you. So let's talk about what options you have for focal points. Now, we're going to spend 10 hours and go through all of these today. No, I'm kidding. Today we're just going to talk about stamping, but if you're interested, we can definitely come back and talk about all of these other focal point ideas. In fact, we will, because I want to show you ideas for the chip shapes and tissues and all that stuff. And there are probably more than this little thing says. So stamping, you can stamp a focal point. Your words could be a focal point. Collaging, collage tissue, photos, drawing, and chipboard shapes. I mean, just look, if you own a die cut machine, or Sizzix, or all those really cool Tim Holtz dies, or dies by people, you know, couldn't they be focal points? Sure. Yeah, I do think words pull the eyes in. Words, we'll talk more about words because a couple people have requested asemic writing info, but words pull the eye because our brains want to read them. Our brains want to decode a word, which is why I find words on art incredibly powerful, whether they're legible or illegible. And this is another reason why you don't want to put your word away from where you want someone to look. Because if your words are out here in the corner, then guess where your viewer's going to look? They're going to look in the corner, right? So your words need to be connected to your focal point. And that's a Dina thing that goes back to my scrapbook days. I can pull old scrapbook pages out and show you. My journaling on scrapbook pages was always near my title and near a photo. Never did I float it somewhere in the Boonverse. Okay, so let's talk about stamping. And then I will let you guys go for the day. So you have a couple options for a stamped focal point. Number one, you can stamp directly on the background or on the tag or whatever you've made. I will say this is not an option I use a lot. The only time that I may stamp directly on a background is if my background is smooth and if there's enough white space so the stamp does not get lost. So I'm just looking for stamps here. So this is my new block, by the way. It fits all of my all my larger stamps. So what's nice about the tags, working on tags, if you haven't done anything that's super bumpy, like modeling paste, or I was watching some of Tim's demo the other day and it was so cool, all that grit paste, that stuff's so cool. So if you've done anything that's textural, you're going to want to not do this, not stamp over it. That includes pages like this, like Madonna's Baby. And listen, you can break all the rules. These are rules according to Dina, okay? But I know if I stamp directly on this, guess what's going to happen? I'm not going to get a good stamped image. It is going to be very imperfect because the bumpiness of the page does not lend itself to be stamped on very well. So I don't like to stamp on anything bumpy. So you have a couple of options, I'm getting ahead of myself. So stamping directly on tags is probably about the only time that I will do that. And if I know the stamped image is going to stand out from the tag, actually become the focal point. Have you ever stamped something and it really didn't become focal? But that's fine. I mean, but black ink helps. I do love my black archival ink, and white space helps too. Okay, so I might do that. Then this may end up on covering up a page in my journal, and then this becomes the focal. Okay, so stamping on the tissue, pre-stamp, pre-stamp, pre-stamp. That way you've got lots of tissue. And what I love about stamping on the tissue is that I could stamp on the tissue. I can then glue it on something bumpy, and then it looks like I stamped on something bumpy, and I still get a good image. So the tissue is how I did it. Probably 90% of my Creativation samples. I hardly any of them had stamping on cardstock. They almost all had stamping on my collage tissue. But then I also keep a little book full of pre-stamped images. You can see where I've cut some of them out at some point because I needed to use them, torn them out. I have about 4 of these started because I keep losing them. So they're really handy because I was even flipping through this earlier and was like, oh, I love that stamp. And then, you know, I can cut it out and use it and color it and all that delicious stuff, right? So when you are adding a stamped image to something, you've got that choice. Stamp directly on, stamp on tissue, and then glue it on. And I just used my original. The nice thing about stamping on the tissue and using the gel is that it doesn't disappear 100%, especially if your background is dark, but it does disappear, I think, enough. And it disappears enough so that you still have your cool background popping through there. Just finding my gel. La, la, la. So, tissue paper, butter the bread with your gel medium. I use the original gel because that is made. It is a dream for the tissue. You get fewer wrinkles if you use the right glue. So, tissue goes down. The other nice thing about tissue is that, have you ever stamped on something and then either the image turned out bad or you wish you wouldn't have put it there? Then the real good thing about stamping with tissue and then layering it on is you can pick it up. My glue has a good 10-minute dry time, and so, you know, if it takes a while to dry, that means I have a little bit of wiggle room, and if I want to move that and adjust that, I pick it right up and glue it down somewhere else. So it gives you a really similar look with a little bit of insurance, I guess is a way to call it. And so if I wanted to put a stamped image on something bumpy, again, I can use the tissue. Let's see. Now, I will say that this is really dark and this is really dark. Well, medium to dark. So is it going to be the best option? This is going to be Madonna's Baby. Is it going to be the best option for a tissue? I don't know. I would guess probably not. Because unless your piece is nice and bold, you know, I don't want it to disappear. If this is my focal point, it needs to be focal. It needs to be the first thing that you look at. So you have to make that decision. The nice thing about the like I said, the glue though, is that if I glue it down and then think, oop, nope, doesn't work, pick it off. No big deal, right? It's not terrible. One time my hairdresser who does my hair, she's a dear friend, one time she cut my hair and it wasn't, and the dye didn't turn out like we expected it, and she goes, well, it's not hideous. And so we that's our joke now. Everything is like, well, it's not hideous, so that's not terrible, right? But would it have more impact if it were on white cardstock or craft or something else? So that's a decision that you get to make artistically. It doesn't look like I stamped that one on white. Okay, so does that make sense with all of these? What is the product again? It's my collage plain tissue. I still can't seem to get it to work. Oh, there we go. I think I'm back on the iPad, so I just might be able to see your comments now. Okay. Now, so focal point for me often comes next. So here's some focals that I've got started with stamps. Oh, let's do one that we've cut out. La, 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 la. I usually don't pre-color these because you don't know what color you want them to be. So I just stamp. I turn on Netflix. Sometimes I'm so lazy I don't even take the stamps off the backing. I ink the entire backing. You don't have to do it in a bound book either. You can just do it on cardstock. I love how the Dilutions Journal takes stamping. It's just because that paper is made to take ink, right? That's why her inks look so good in her journal. So it's really good for stamping, and you get a lot of paper for your money. I'm just saying, wouldn't be bad to use one of those. So see the difference though by putting the white is going to reduce the background, right? So stamping directly on or stamping on tissue and gluing it in does not really reduce the background. So that is a judgment call that you need to make. So let's work on these two here. I'm going to glue this on with ultra thick gel. So my ultra thick gel, also known as glue stick in a jar, I just stick my finger in it, swipe it down. Also has a good 10-minute dry window, or maybe even 15, because I like to change my mind constantly when I create. All right, so let's go back to, is it workable? So we decided on a focal point, right? And then we need to add supporting elements, the star of the show. And sometimes, I'll be honest, sometimes supporting elements for me come first, and sometimes they don't. And so I'm going to draw little arrows between these two, because it's kind of like which came first, the chicken or the egg, the supporting elements or the focal and then the supporting elements. It's totally up to you. And again, because the glue is, oop, I'm dropping stuff everywhere. Because the glue is removable for a good 10 minutes, you've got some time, because I do glue as I go. I do not audition it out perfectly. That to me is so boring and such a drag. Okay, so supporting elements. You're going to add the supporting elements. Oh, that's focals. Supporting elements can be these and probably many other things. It can be more stenciling. If I stencil on these backgrounds, I would probably only use a color that already exists in the background or neutrals. Art marks. So Sweet Ray Missigman, I'm sure you follow her, and if you don't, you should. She's so awesome. Her and Sandy Keene, they're both great with all their cool little art marks. So you can do art marks. Don't forget fine tip applicators for little elements. Speckling and splattering. Words can be supporting elements. Paint circles. More stamping, but not focal point stamping. Maybe stamping done with paint or another color. Painted papers, tissues, washi. So all of these elements can, all of these and probably more, if you have more ideas, can be supporting elements. So now I look and think to myself, what do I feel like doing? And then I dig through my pile. Usually I dig through what is pretty much directly on my desk, and I find something that I think, I like that. La, 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 la. And these supporting elements, they need to support the focal point. That does not mean that you float them out everywhere like a sticker sneeze. I want you to overlap. That was another one of my Dina art gospels. Backgrounds don't matter, and the gospel of overlap. If things don't overlap, they look like they don't belong together on the page. Okay, so why does that work? Why does that work? La, 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 la. Any clues why that works? Color. The color is the same as the colors in the background. That's one of the reasons why it works. Another reason why it works is because it is tucked under the focal point, it's giving the focal point a bigger platform. It's giving it, it's overlapped. It's overlapped, and it's making this footprint a little bit larger. Okay, now let's see. I'm cutting up this page. This is a page from an old journal. She might show up on something later. Cool. All right, so I want to keep drawing the eye. So your goal here is to draw your eye to the focal point, not detract from the focal point. And you have so many options here, it's easy to get paralyzed. I mean, you can turn to your collage collectives and start cutting out papers. You know, we all own a million billion stencils, and, you know, It can be overwhelming. So I say you might know 100 tricks. Do 3 on a page. Do 3 tricks on a page, my friends. 3. And listen, if you want to do more, if you can defend it, I will accept. So by putting these hearts in a line around my dude, I am reinforcing that I want you to look here. Yes, and black will calm a spread. It will draw the eye. I'll cut that off, by the way, or maybe not. Okay, cool. I think that looks good. Definitely words. You can write right on the page. You can write on a separate paper and glue it in the page. You can write with a Sharpie on the tissue. I do it with a Sharpie on the tissue because I have really low tolerance for waiting for things to dry, and I don't believe in heat tools. So a Sharpie is instantly dry on the tissue, whereas like my favorite pen, which is that Fude, it's a pigment ink, so it will dry, but it will not be dry instantly, y'all. All right. Now, this tissue can be glued down, and so that the background shows through it, or I can use it whole. I mean, unglued. La, 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 la. And again, this has to be underlapped, overlapped. It has to be connected. If you don't connect it, it's going to be that sticker sneeze that we talked about. I think this little figure needs some serious pink cheeks. What do you guys think? So one of the ways to make sure that a stamped image looks integrated when you put it on the page, overlapping is one of the ways. Another way is to repeat a color from your background. So I do have some pink coming over here, and so I think that pink cheeks will repeat that color and help it look like he belongs. So I'm just going to grab a scribble stick and a brush. I'm going to hold the scribble stick and just get some of the pigment off with my brush. Just give some pink cheeks. I do love me some pink cheeks. Sweet. I think, don't you think that helps this figure look like they belong? Another Dina thing that I do a lot is if my backgrounds look like the whole color, the whole rainbow barfed on them, which is sort of these backgrounds, I do not at this point color in my image solidly. I leave it black and white mostly, except for a few bits here and there. It's just a Dina thing. I feel like there's already plenty of color. Something else that helps you view a focal point is contrast. So by keeping this black and white against the rainbow puke of the background, it means that there's contrast. And so it's also helping your eye look here. La, 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 la. I think speckle and black circle. Yeah, speckle. Let's do black circles. The minute I put this black paint out, you guys, how long until I put literally everything on my table in it? Pink splatters would be good. Heck yes. Speckle, I call speckling or paint splatter, I call it the great unifier, because what it does is it touches a little bit of almost everything on the page, and it just means that everything, it's like it touches a little of everything. I'm just going to test my circle. I'm using a gesso lid. I'm going to test my circle on one of these to see if I've loaded it properly. Looks like not very good. There we go. That's better. And then again, your circle is going to point your eye where? To your focal point. And therefore I'm going to overlap them. See how they form a visual triangle around my guy? Because Caroline said pink speckle, let's speckle pink. So much easier than a paint or you know, the heavy body that you then have to dilute. It's so much easier just to pull the stem out of a out of a gloss spray. Yeah, don't forget to overlap. Overlapping is the key. I believe that things need to be overlapped 30 to 50%, which is a lot. So that's why something like this works good on the backgrounds that are visually intense, because they are also reducing the background. The visual footprint of this is going to reduce the craziness of the background. Okay, so I'll just work on this one here. So this dude, I glued him on, and I've talked for so long, I probably could still get him off, but it's not going to be the best option at this point. So test time. How do I get you to look at him? Because this is pretty strong, right? So how do I make sure that you look at him? You're all afraid to be wrong. You're not wrong. I mean, you can't read my mind. I realize that. Have you watched Diane Reevely do her cool writing? She can do it so quick. I can't do it like that. Words under him, yeah. So Lori, I'm doing something really similar. I'm putting words next to him. I would probably take a little more care. But writing, I never claimed to be like great at writing. But do I? I don't care if I'm great at writing. I just care that I'm having a good time. And we'll talk more in depth about words on another daily demo. These are like words blowing out of his brain. Oh, that sounded terrible. I didn't mean that terrible. Flowing. So, yeah, so stenciling, I think stenciling with the neutral will help. Let's do that next. So I added some words at this point. Because this looked like a flow, it looked like a spill. I like the idea that his words or emotions are spilling out of him. Let's do some neutral stenciling. La, 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 la. If you guys don't have this Squoval stencil, what are you even doing with your life? It's so good. It's one of those stencils that you look at and think, yeah, I don't need that. But I will say it's one of my absolute most used. So I'm not afraid to stencil over some of the text because remember, we have to overlap elements. So the stenciling doesn't necessarily have to overlap everything, but it needs to overlap something. I'm running out of white paint that I put there. Okay, I think that works. La, 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 la. Let's do more words. I love to combine my own text with stamped text or the collage tissues. Those collage tissues, you guys, I need a million more packs of them. I'm always collecting new ideas and quotes to use. So I'm going to put Trust the Path on here. What I'm not going to do is float Trust the Path up here in the corner because that doesn't count enough as an overlap. This has to overlap my focal or be near, at least be near. If it's not near, it's going to seem like it doesn't belong. I think that helps. I think he could have some black hair. By making his hair black or, grayish, I'm also going to give him some more visual weight since I do have a lot of that background peeking through. This is one of the drawings that I did when I was stuck on bed rest after my hysterectomy. And so I just got a little sketch journal and I pulled out, I brought my scribble sticks into my room. I brought Inktense pencils. I bought when I was at Art from the Heart once, I just bought tons of Inktense pencils. So I have a lot of those, played with those. Just tools that I hadn't used for a really long time. And that's where a lot of these stamped images, this and my church notes, that's where they came from. I'm wanting some white in the whites of his eyes. Just if you could make the whites of the eyes look white again versus look like a zombie, it'll look better. This is just a grease pencil, China marker. So I'm adding highlights with this grease pencil. I could have gotten a paintbrush and done some paint. That would have been fine. But I know that I knew that I had this in the drawer. Isn't that interesting how that little bit of highlight helps his face so much? Now, does he need any collage? Sure. Why not? I'm always pro collage. I'm always pro add more crap. So I'm going to add more crap. What base is this? So this is a 6x6 inch journal. This is my white media journal. But the concepts are the same whether you're working on a small tag or something big. Another thing that I do that helps cohesiveness is I don't put too many stamped images on a single page. I just don't do it. Must be in heart moods, you guys. Because I love y'all. I don't do lots and lots and lots of stamped images on a page. 1, 3, 5. And usually it's the same image repeated. It's not going to be every stamp in the set. That helps your eye. So if your eye has an awful lot of imagery in the focal point to pop around, it can be quite confusing. So by limiting that focal, I can get away with a lot. Question answered. Okay, I missed your question. If you put all the funky peeps on a page, should be they. Well, yeah. I mean, I'm not saying you can't use all the funky peeps on a single page, but they don't have to be next to each other. But what you do need to realize is that you are telling a story with those images. Okay, so let's see. I mean, you can, but remember, if you spread the funky peeps out, I'm just grabbing some of my funky peeps out of my book here. If you spread them out, they are going to look like they're people that are waiting for a bus, that they don't have any relationship with each other. Remember the principle of proximity, and that principle, I talk about it a lot in my first book, and really that's what overlapping is all about. The closer you put something together, the stronger the relationship is, and the further apart you put them, the weaker the relationship is. So let's say you're telling a story about our national consciousness and how we're all coming together in these hard times, and artists are supporting, and authors are reading things, books on live on Instagram. And have you been catching all the musicians that are doing concerts? I'm not even a country fan, and I watched a lot of that Keith Urban concert. So people are just looking out and sharing. So maybe that's your story, or maybe you want to tell a story about how you're estranged from people that you wish you weren't estranged from. Okay, so like let's say you have these 3 funky peeps. Okay, let me hold on before I move on to that. Did this one make sense? You're good with this one, right? Yeah? Okay. I would call that done. I feel like it's visually dense, and I would do nothing else to that page personally. All right. I'm looking for something else to work on, you guys. to show you the diff. Okay. Should we pick that off? Sure. Sweet. Okay, now I've got a background. So, if I do this, what story is that telling? Because it's telling a story. Yeah, Madonna's baby success. Yeah, I like it. It turned out all right. So this is telling a story. Thoughts. Yeah, that they're individuals. Why do you say that, Jillian? Daddy, mama, and baby. They're so far apart, though. Distancing, 6 feet apart. Oh my gosh, social distancing. Yes, this is social distancing. I went to Costco today, you guys. People have lost their nut. Seriously. They even threw toilet paper in my cart. I don't even need toilet paper because I tend to be an overbuyer. And I just bought it. I was like, you know what? If somebody's going to need this and I can give it away. So I bought toilet paper to give to people. Yeah, loneliness, social distancing. Exactly. Okay. Also, why is one guy floating in the nether regions, right? That's just weird. Yeah, one went to heaven, exactly. So you can use them all, I think, in the sense that they have a similar line, but you can use them all if that's part of the story you want to tell. So you've just got to think about that. Is your story social distancing? Is your story, now this is mom, dad, and the baby, right? That is mom, dad, and the baby, because they're both of their heads are tilted down. Remember, your eyes will follow the eyes of whatever you're looking at on a piece of art. So these two eyes, they're looking down. So guess what your brain will automatically do? It's called the sight line. You will follow the line down to the dude. So I personally think that works. So Funny Peeps works for me with a lot of imagery. Now that said, would I then use that same principle? So I guess the point is it depends on the stamped image and the story you're telling. Would I put her on there and this dude, he actually drew him with a pen, and so he has a different kind of line. And then would I also put this funny guy? And that answer would be no. I just wouldn't do that. That's, I'm not saying, and if you do that, I'm going to look at your art, and if you're going to tag me, I'm going to be like, sweet, it looks great. I don't judge other people's art at all. I can only tell you why I do what I do. But for me, that's disjointed. There probably is a way to make it work. Overlapping helps. Overlapping helps you tell the story. But in general, I probably would choose one, or I would do 3 of the same. That's just a Dina thing. You can go back and look at all my samples, and it'll make a lot more sense. I had another thought that went in my little pea brain. I wonder where it went. I don't know, but now I've got glue there, so let's cover that up. Let's do the mom, the dad, and the baby there. Kind of like that. Oh, I was gonna make one more comment about the sight line. So your eye will follow eyes, even these weird kind of naughty, zombie people. Your eye will follow where they're looking, which means where you put this person on the page can either be really jarring or it can be interesting. Now, so for example, let's say I'm putting him here, okay? And if I put him over here, where does it draw your eye? Don't you think it draws your eye off the page? It draws your eye away from the artwork. So it's actually considered in photography, it's considered kind of bad photography according to the rules. I mean, remember all of this can be broken for artistic license, but if your eyes lead somebody off of a canvas, right? So in general, Dina Land, where I live, I would have put it here. Now that brings my eye back down to the circle. The circle's drawing my eye around, and then you're actually in this loop looking at that. So there's no right or wrong. It just depends on that story that you want to tell. And So let's say you make something and you don't like it and you can't figure out why. It might be as simple as moving a stamped image because the stamped image is causing your eye to go somewhere weird. I'll sometimes look at people and they'll be like, oh, I can't stand it. And I said, oh, you need to move all those 2 inches closer together. And then they put their pieces closer together and guess what happens? It worked. So 90% of the time you're on the right path. There's just some little tweak that needs to happen. So let's do mom, dad, and the baby. All right, now they're floating, so they need something to stand on. Got to ground them. See why I needed to have a glue that that didn't give me away. When I taught in Panama this year, all of my product I had to send to a forwarder. Because, how do you get I had 3 classes of 50 people or something like that. How do you get that much product over the border and blah, 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 rules and customs? So we sent a lot of it to a freight forwarder and my box of glues got lost. Oh, I do, Daniel, I glue as I go. I glue as I go because it helps me make quick decisions. This is my ultra thick glue. Ultra thick gel. But anywho, so my glues got lost and I had to use Finn's glue, and her glue is great. Her glue is instantly stuck though. So being someone like me who's used to shuffling things around, I just wanted to throw it out the window. But it's perfect for what she does because she needs that glue to hold on all those cool heavy items that she does her awesome collages with. So it just depends on your working style and what you need it to do. My glue would suck for her. It would not be good glue for Finn. But it works for me because I'm a shuffler and I like to shuffle stuff around. And when it is glued down, it's glued. It'll stay. So the reason I glue as I go, I don't know. I just glue as I go. I think you can spend so much time auditioning, you never get anything done, right? It does it reminds me of the Nativity too. It's kind of cool. Does it need more supporting elements? I think so. Let's stencil it. Oh my word, I'm getting paint on everything just like normal. La 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 la. I'm singing more today because it's the afternoon. We'll add some stars for the Nativity. Almost Easter. One of my funnest Easters, you guys. I love Easter. But one of my funnest Easters was when we had our friends visiting from England, and there it's not very common to color eggs and then do an egg hunt, hide eggs. And so Maisie was visiting us, our friend's daughter, and we found out she had never colored eggs, and my kids just couldn't believe it because, they've spent their whole life with mom making them color eggs. And so we went and bought all the stuff and colored eggs, and then in the dark we went outside and we hid eggs and candy and all, we just did what we always do. Oh my gosh, it was so fun, you guys. We had so much fun introducing them to that. And of course, all the symbolism. Wearing something fun to church on Easter Sunday. We might still be in isolation at that point. We'll have to do our own. Okay, see how by putting those stars in a line, it's drawing your eye to my people. And then, how about more pink cheeks? All right, so this is while I finish this up, this is your chance to ask any questions. I'm gonna watch the screen. I've kept you guys for quite a long time today. Sorry about that. I'm gonna watch the screen and let me know if you have any questions or comments. And if you're an auditioner, that's fine. I just, this is how I do it. There are a million ways to do it. As I always say, there are as many ways to make art as there are hands that make art. A tiny heart on the baby. Yes, good idea. Oh my gosh, I just speckled Joseph. Oops, so well. Oh, and Mary. Oh, gosh. La, 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 la. So if my speckle ends up where I don't want it to, I do 2 things. 1, I decide it doesn't matter. Or 2, I go in with a white paint pen when it's dry, and I get rid of the speckle that's bugging me. Easy peasy. All right, I gotta find that pink paper because I think a little pink heart on the baby would be perfect. When I used to teach this mark making class where we would make marks and then identify things in the marks and then make paintings. And I would always notice mothers and babies in all of my mark making pieces. So there's just something, I don't know, mama's heart, right? All right. That makes sense? Oh, poor Joseph. He really got he really got tweaked. We can fix that. When it's dry, I will paint over his face so he doesn't have a bad rash. Any other comments that I missed, my friends? What grease pencil for? A grease pencil is like sometimes they're called a China marker. Not China the country, but China the dishes, because people would mark them for sale, and then China markers will wipe off something slick. They're not water soluble though, but I just knew I had a white one in the drawer. Why did you put the small tab at the top? Notice that it's an arrow. So the tab is pointing where? We read top to bottom, left to right. That's how we read in the Western world. So by putting something here that's providing direction, it's pulling your eye down towards the focal point. Using paint or ink with stencils. On this page, I don't know if that's a question, but on this page, I would use paint. Probably wouldn't spray it. The background is gloss spray, so it's already pretty slick. So I know that if I spray it again, it's going to do that resist thing. So that's not going to happen for me. Did I answer everything? I think I did. All right, my friends. I hope you have a great day. I hope this helped a little bit with the critique phase, with the now what phase. And we will continue on other focal point ideas in other daily demos. Bye everybody. Have an awesome day. What is the product again? What is the product again? Which product? Somebody asked me a question and I just happened to notice it right as I was leaving. I'm not sure I understand your question. What is the product again? Re-ask it. Yep, I'll see you guys tomorrow. I don't see the question coming back, but okay. All right, if you think of it, email me. Okay, bye everybody. Bye.